This is the Tame Aperture podcast.
Open the pod bay doors, Cal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Well, first of all, let's go around the room and determine which were first-time viewings and which were. So Darko, I'd seen before.
Yeah. I think
we'd all seen. Okay.
I think it's. I haven't seen it for a few years.
Yeah, it'd been a few years for me
but
too.
I've seen it multiple times. Yeah.
The one I watched was like a special anniversary edition. I don't.
Director's cut.
Wasn't the director's cut, because the director's cut has like extended scenes. I saw that years ago, but I kind of tried to find that one, but that's not the one I watched.
You know where you go, by the way, not to go off tangent. You know where you go to find these movies?
Besides iTunes? That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, because I actually been buying physical copies, and I love every minute of it. And I can buy them for $3 or $4.
What?
I found Donnie Darko for $3.99.
That's not like the Walmart.
Are you like? I was like, you
There's
been
it's
diving?
called. It's in Taylorsville. It's called FYE.
Oh, FYE.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have almost all these movies, and they're all like $3 or $4.
Damn it! Because I rented it for $3 or $4, and now I'm never.
Anyway,
No, that's
FYE,
a good
that's
idea.
a shout out. They are a potential sponsor. Shout out to FYE because they're kicking it on getting me the movies I need to watch.
For
Yeah, I've just been renting them on
price,
iTunes.
You know?
No, I haven't seen Donnie Darko for a few years, but I've
Yeah.
seen it multiple times. Now, this was my first viewing for Mother.
You as well? Oh, cool.
And I had not seen it before. I had heard things from people, but this was the first time I had watched it. Had you seen it before?
I had not. No, this is my first viewing.
So
as
we
well.
all saw Mother the first time.
That's
and
fun.
This was a rewatch on Donnie Darko.
Yep.
All right. So
Cool.
a lot of things to talk about. What do you want to get into first, T? What do you want to dive into? I mean, I have a lot of things, and Donnie Darko to me, I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, that movie it resonates, is what I mean. Yeah. It just resonates in a lot of ways for me. And
Well,
Mother,
start us off, yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, if we're gonna look at the two, like Mother, I watched it twice because I had to start piecing it together and figuring out. Like you were talking about, this is part of the podcast, is which we're overanalyzing things, and that's part of the fun, is we like to look at movies in depth and in layers.
Yeah.
So, I watched it twice, and I get the allegory, I think, but I don't know that it works for me, like immediately, and I have some notes on it, but I think it almost feels like it's like this sign of it's like virtue signaling by Aronofsky. He's like, let me tell you about this allegory about Mother, and we rape and we pillage and we take everything and we don't ever look back and we are greedy and all these different things, and we just take and take and take and take and take and take and take, and we
horrible
never.
stewards.
Yeah, we're bad stewards of Mother, and revenge will come. And it didn't resonate the way that I thought. I mean, I get the allegory, but it doesn't resonate with me. The virtue signaling is like, okay, that's great. You spent $30 million on a film to tell me about how bad we are as human beings treating the earth. Do you know what I mean? And just take the $30 million and donate it to whatever cause you think's better. Like, it didn't resonate. I didn't think it was that strongly done. And I like Aronofsky. Like, if I look at his first film, if we go back to like first-time film directors, I look at Pi. I think Pi is really well done. And as he moves forward in some of his films, like you get to stuff like Black Swan and stuff like that. Like
Requiem for a Dream.
Requiem is next level. I mean, it's done really well. It's artistically done. It's super stylistic. It's definitely raw in human nature, just like gritty about people living with certain situations and like drugs and like family dilemmas and like just the raw and realness of it's great. But this one is like, let me tell you about my agenda. And I just didn't resonate with me. And I also thought, but what about you guys? Open it up, like impressions.
Well, it was kind of fun. I didn't watch a trailer. I didn't watch anything.
Neither did I.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, great. Did you watch a trailer?
Never saw it.
Okay. So
last week.
that was rarely do I get to watch a film completely not knowing a single thing, and I did that on purpose just because so I didn't have a clue what the fuck was going on for the first hour. I mean, really. I mean, I was kind of, but then it started to click near the end, and then that last half an hour was just like shit crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely escalates quickly.
Yeah.
And and I will say, like, the escalation's done well, and it is unnerving when you're watching it. It's going so rapidly and happening so fast. So that works, right?
Yeah.
I thought it worked. I thought that worked. So I'm not going to shit on it entirely.
No, and the performances were actually really fantastic.
I thought they were cruddy.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were great.
I thought they were.
It's very formulaic. They're stock characters, right?
Yeah.
They have to serve one purpose and one purpose only. There's no depth to the characters.
Which, again, I mean, and not to take it away from him, I mean, I think he's doing that intentionally.
Yeah, it's intentional.
It's not a thing that he's saying, oh, I don't want to create characters that don't have depth.
Yeah.
This is their service, and the service is to the analogous idea of climate change or whatever he's saying about, because it's Mother Earth.
Yeah.
So whatever he's saying about that, and you're right, they're just one tone, one pillar. They don't really have multiple dynamics.
Right.
You know.
Right.
See, I saw a lot of Christianity in it.
There's definitely a lot of religion mixed in somehow.
I mean, definitely Jesus and Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was trying
the
to
brothers
figure
fighting
part of it out, which was like I could see the nuance of it. Was like, okay, this is a religious thing as well. And if you know, like, his track record, he's also doing, like, if you look at, like, he's done those types of films before where he's hinting on something religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that in here too, but I was kind of figuring out the pieces, and I guess it has. I actually thought Javier Bardem's character, which his name is just him.
Mm-hmm. In the credits, I read it.
Yeah. So it's just him. And he also says, "I am I" at the end, which is a religion. I thought it was God.
That's what I thought. I thought he was God.
Yeah. Is that wrong?
See, I think.
What were your analysis on that?
I thought he was God. I thought that Ed Harris was Adam, and Michelle Pfeiffer was Eve, and then they had the boys Cain and Abel, and then
that's what. Similarly, yes.
Yeah, and then I saw. I mean, there was a flood. You know, when things kind of started getting kind of bad the first time, there was a flood, and everyone left, and it was clean again for a moment, but then it was just people after that, like the population of the world coming in and destroying Mother Earth and not listening to. But see, what I'm trying to figure out is Jennifer Lawrence's character. Was she, I mean, was it just Mother Earth, or was she like a deity as well? Like a counterpart, a heavenly mother, if you will, of.
I interpreted it as her as
just
the literal
Earth.
being of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing to me was at the beginning of the film, you see a different mother being in the very first shot before the opening credit with the title.
Mm-hmm.
You see a woman whose mother being in burning.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And she's different. And then if you go to the end, it's bookended because it shows Jennifer Lawrence she does she burns.
Yeah,
herself,
she burns.
Sacrificial, and then to cleanse it, I guess, in a sense. But then you go to that last scene, and it's
a different woman.
Opening scene that she was in, but it's a different woman.
Yeah.
So I was and this, like I said, I don't know that I can understand exactly what he's trying to do. I think that's unfair to be like, oh, I know exactly what he's trying to do. Although I think we're on something.
It's definitely there.
I think it was, for me, analogous to like a new Earth, and it's a resurrected Earth. It's a new thing. It's completely atoned for, and it's starting over because then he puts the diamond. Before that last scene, he puts the diamond back up.
Mm-hmm.
Like she comes out of the fire.
Right.
A phoenix, which is like a diamond and a restorative piece of rock,
mm-hmm.
and then it renews what once was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean.
Well, then there was the whole thing with the child too. So that's where I was a little fuzzy on what kind of he was trying to say with her, because she gives birth to essentially a Messiah.
Yeah.
And they eat his flesh.
Yeah.
You know, and all
That
of
to
that.
me was crazy. That scene was crazy. And I think, and I don't know, but for me, when I watched it, I felt like what he was trying to say was, we did everything. Like, in other words, they gave so less of a shit about everything that they literally would take all that she had to give. So in other words, if Mother Earth gives everything, and if you could think metaphorically, what could you give as a mother that would be the most precious and most sacred? It would be your child. So for me, it was metaphorically. It was like she was giving birth to this thing. She was like literally giving everything she had, and we were like, "Fuck that, we're killing it."
Life
and life, right? So I don't think, for me, that wasn't as really in the setup and the structure, which I see what you're saying and I agree with, which is like you had, but I don't know that it wasn't like it was Jesus Christ or like some. It was
but definitely influenced by maybe,
but definitely it's definitely inspired by in some content. Yeah,
they had
for sure
the worship cards and the candles and it was very religious.
But what do you think? What is that
setting?
When you watched? I think we're hitting on something, and like I said, it's impossible for us to know exactly what Aronofsky's trying to do. But I will say, I think we're all on to this idea of the allegory and understanding what he's saying to an extent. But what did you think about the way it was done and the way it was portrayed?
This is where I can bring in Donnie Darko, because Donnie Darko is a film I've seen several times, and I'm still trying to understand it. That's what I love about the film. It's one of those when you just watch over and over again, and you get a little piece of something out of it each time you watch it. Those are timeless films and ones that are dear to you. So Donnie Darko, this time, there's a quote where Jake Gyllenhaal he talks about creation, and he said, "Destruction is a form of creation," and that was my bridge to Mother, where this is a film that is completely from the get-go destructive. So that opening shot is so important. Like, I knew I was in for a long ride with that opening shot. If you open with someone's flesh burning off of them, and then the whole film is red burning, like I just had a sunburn, so my face is already red. So I was already on my mind in my mental Rolex there, and I was burning. I was hot. Like, I was feeling that boiler room. Aronofsky is going to hijack you into this film, light you on fire, and see how you like it through the whole film. And they say film, you should have peaks and valleys where you can rest. It is so frustrating to watch this film that I loved it, because Aronofsky can make you feel like you're burning. Yeah. Like, I was like, you're just burning with anger, physically and mentally. And it's one of those films. This is a 2.5 hour film.
Yes,
I was exhausted. Like, I had to pause it and get drinks of water. I was like,
T jumps in the pool.
I can't breathe.
Cool down.
Cool down. But there's so many references to burning, and you really, the whole movie is within a house that is burning, and parts of it are being destroyed. So that idea that we're destroying everything in the house, it's just slowly. And then near the end, very fast, but it's slowly dying and hemorrhaging. And there's, there are some shining scenes in there where it was like horrific. So I think they brought an element of horror. Because when I watched it, I'm like, is this a horror film? What? It felt like a horror film at first.
Thriller, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Psychological thriller.
Psychological thriller. It's just the mind games that are being played.
Well, did you have a break? The break that I got when she read the poem, and I love that we didn't know what the poem was. I thought that was fantastic, but just that visual of the house just slowly, and it actually, for whatever reason, like, I needed that break, and I like almost teared up for a second just during that part. I was like, oh, thank God. There's something good and something wonderful, and I kind of felt that was a moment where I was like, okay. This may be turning around. It didn't, but I loved that moment of just I mean, again, is that the Bible? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's the good word, whatever it was, and resonated with all these different people. And again, like human beings do, we grab something good and we fuck it up and make it perverted and turn it into the chaos. So that was the end of it. Yeah. Whereas at first it's like, it says something to everyone. All these copies were sold and everyone is reading it and you're just like, this is what she's been wanting to do. This is what she's been supporting him for, is for this moment. And then, it went off the rails from there. But that moment I really enjoyed. I thought that was a good moment of just
relaxation.
I mean, really, and just if you think about it, after she made that dinner, just all hell broke loose from then on. I mean, they had a little break for the birth, but kind of not, because it was still like...
No, it was still... They still built it in a way that they were entrapped, and you knew what was happening outside, and they were all waiting for the birth to happen, so it was still kind of anxious.
And still, and even at that point in the movie, I still wasn't sure what the hell was happening. Like, I was like, is this all metaphorical? Is this, or something actually going to transpire here? Are we going to is she going to take off some VR glasses and be like, oh, I mean, I just didn't know where in the world this thing was going.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of uncertainty.
There's some shit I don't understand.
It's a roller coaster.
Like, what was the bloody vagina in the floor? What was that about?
I think it just led to the oil basin, because it drips down through the floor.
Oh, and it
made hits
the
light.
Yeah.
And when it hits the light, she goes down and it shatters, and the blood circulates around the door that leads to the oil.
That I get, but it kept coming back.
The house is alive.
Or is the house
I felt like the house.
Oh, okay.
She's part of that house, because
and that's why she kept feeling the heartbeat.
I thought the symbolism was that she built the house, because they asked her about it. Did you do all this yourself?
Oh,
She's
yeah.
like, yes.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's this Victorian house that's supposed to be really renovated, beautiful, a beautiful scene. Every room is special. She created it, and there's this elements of that. It's bleeding, it's hemorrhaging, it's dying.
Yeah, I thought the symbolism was that there's a tie-in between the two of them, her and the house.
And the house.
Are connected,
and when you're seeing the, like you said, the blood spots or the imagery.
Ultimately, the house, I think she touches the floor again and it dies.
Yeah.
She goes into the heart beating, and it finally turns to ashes.
Yeah.
And so does she. She has some connection with the house. And the house, I think, also bleeds out into this beautiful world. There's like 2 or 3 shots of the outside. And... I knew we were suffocating when the very first shot, it's so out of focus on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, that was a beautiful scenery, in the morning, and you made it out of focus. And then they show, the surrounding of where she actually lives, and it's not that. Then you realize, I am in hell.
Yeah.
She's sitting in this house, and everything, like all suffering... like psychological, physically. I mean, she nearly gets raped. There's just so much bad that happens to her, and she just takes it. I think that's what was just it was a bitter pill to swallow. It really was. And I think for me, it was perfectly executed. Not the best story, because I hate hearing stories that eat at my conscience. Like I knew I could do better at something, and I look at the news now. What is it? South America, the rainforests are burning. A soccer field every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And what the hell is Todd doing?
Well, I think that's
this impacts me, but
that's what bothers me is that and it's probably also my own, internal feelings.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think, and I'll go back, like not loving the film, but understanding. And I would agree with you, which is like executionally, he executed it masterfully.
Yeah,
he really did. And the tight shots, and it never really gets. You never go out and see things. You're always focused on Mother. You're always following around, but everything's always so claustrophobic in the way that it's put together. And so, and just all the other things we talked about. I mean, I think he did a great job putting it together, but I just don't, once again, I'll go back to, it's like this idea of like virtue signaling, like saying, hey, if we're not paying attention and you're going to, and to me, it almost seems counterproductive. That's all.
Yeah.
And if you're really going to look at it, and I can't say anything because I don't do shit, But I don't know. I know their Amazon's burning right now, and I feel bad. But I don't know. You're right. What do I do?
I feel like
But my point is this: is like, okay, you spent $30 million on the film. Mm-hmm. That doesn't include marketing, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you spent $50 to $60 million on this thing. Why didn't you just donate it to the Amazon? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, like, that's great that you said that, but it's stuff I already know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need a whole movie to tell me that we're shitty stewards of the earth. I honestly don't. I already know that. Mm-hmm. I can drive around the street downtown and go look at everybody outside and the trash on the curb and understand on a smaller scale that we're not taking care of what's around us. And I just didn't need, and I'm not saying, once again, I actually, as a filmmaker, great job. But as a story and as a film, unnecessary for me.
Fair enough. So I did a little research on I guess he wrote this in 5 days. Like the first draft was done in 5 days. It came to him one day and he just busted it out and he said after that 5-day stretch of writing it, we were shooting a year later. To me, I was like, whoa, that's pretty. Would you classify this as a passion project for him and he doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks and this is what he wanted to do? And
I would hope, look, as a filmmaker, I would hope.
Right. That's what you should do.
You should do anyway, every time. I don't really, so I'm not condoning, I'm not like saying, hey, don't,
right.
I'm saying like, it didn't resonate beyond, like it was unnecessary. I got it and it was done well.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. Look, as a filmmaker, if that's his passion, just go do it. And you should always kind of have that mentality anyway, which is like, just go do it. And it's hard to, because I've been in positions where I haven't always felt that way, but I kind of grew out of it. And I'm like, you get to a point and you just go, well, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. I'm just going to go do what I'm going to do. I'm not worried about the perception of what someone thinks about something I write or something I put together. And that's a good thing. So if that's his thing, then all the more applause to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I like him as a filmmaker, but I just thought this movie didn't track the same way as his previous films. And I also thought it was a big virtue signal of like, hey, the Earth's dying and the climate change is real. And I fucking know that. So but I'm not, and similarly, like to everybody that's watched the film, what are you doing about it? Yeah. You're not doing a fucking thing. So I didn't need the movie to tell me those things.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from it being well put together, it felt pointless.
Fair enough. I mean, would I watch it again? I'll probably watch it one more time.
That's the barometer, though, for me as a movie. If I'll extrapolate everything else. And Todd was talking, and this gets us back to Donnie Darko, because as a movie, that's what is the barometer. Like, am I going to watch this thing again? The honest answer, and I like Aronofsky. By the way, I like a lot of his films. I just don't like Mother. I'll never watch it again. I have no rhyme, no reason to ever see this film in my entirety of my life again, and my life and my hours will be better spent elsewhere.
I love it.
But Donnie Darko, rewatching that again and seeing that again after a couple years being away from it, I'm still going, shit, that's good. Yeah. And I'll watch it again. And that's a rewatchable. Like, I'll watch it again and again and again, and I'll always have something to pull from it,
Well, the biggest, bonus of both of these films is there's no Andy McDowell, of course.
Get out of here.
I'm joking. Am I joking?
Maggie Gyllenhaal was great performance.
Now, that wasn't her? Was that her?
His sister.
Her debut?
I don't know.
I know. I don't think it was her debut, but she was pretty fresh in the game.
They're pretty fresh. Both of them are. Both Gyllenhaals are pretty fresh in the game.
I mean,
he had done City Slickers as a kind of a bit part. That was his first film.
But this is a lead role.
So but it's a lead.
A different ballgame.
Yeah. All-star. I mean, Drew Barrymore, Seth Rogen.
Oh, it's great.
It's Seth Rogen's debut. That I knew.
Seth Rogen. But he only has a couple lines, and all the 2 lines that he does have are
I like your boobs.
lines. One is I like your boobs.
That's his first. I mean, if that wasn't like a fortune cookie into his career, his first first line on the film ever is I like your boobs.
But didn't your dad like stab your mom? Like that's his other line. So like he's a proverbial douchebag.
That was definitely a foreshadowing into his.
It also has what's his face Noah, the teacher.
Yeah.
His name's Noah.
What is his name?
Wiley.
I'll look it up.
I don't know. But let's not forget P. Swayze. Let's not forget P. Swayze up in this.
Patrick Swayze.
Making an appearance in the film.
Would it be a cameo?
It's a pretty big role.
It's not a cameo.
It flirts with cameo.
No, it's a supporting role.
Okay, it's a supporting role.
His role is very important because it's that.
See, I've never thought he's that good of an actor.
Science versus doctrine.
Nostalgia from Point Break.
Point Break.
By the way, that's a rewatchable.
Keanu Reeves.
Let's see. And Todd, going to this quote. So that is an interesting quote because it does tie into Mother a little bit. How's it going? No, you're good. You're good. It's the destruction is a form of creation. So the fact they burn. This is Donnie when they're talking about the novel, the short story from Graham Greene. Right?
Noah Wiley.
Noah Wiley. That's what I said. I got it right.
You got it right. I can remember what you said.
Yeah, I said Noah Wiley.
I'm the fact checker.
That's good. I wanted you to check it. I just wasn't sure. But there's a short story by Graham Greene. It says that destruction is a form of creation. So the fact this is Donnie's answer to his teacher's question. So the fact that they burn the money is ironic. They just want to see what happens when they tear the world apart. They want to change things. So what is that? Does that tie into Mother and tie?
There's so many parallels. The more you think about it, yeah. I think a few things that in analyzing both films, they're both about love and suffering. And this is an important film point. I think when you watch as an audience, you have to be able to connect and then separate from the film. And with Donnie Darko, you can connect, and there's so many wonderful characters, different points of view that are presented. You root for Donnie, and ultimately you can see his personal sacrifice at the end, right? And ultimately, I think he challenges fear and love as a one straight road, which in Mother is presented as a one straight road.
Absolutely.
You're going to hell. We're in hell. We created it, and we're the cause of it. And we need to do something about it. And that is almost like a very a Buddhist point of view where there is suffering and terrible things in life, and this suffering is caused by something I'm doing.
Yeah, you made your bed, sleep in it, or lie with the repercussions.
We created it. And there's a very closeness to nature and life. That I could see in Mother, but I couldn't disconnect from it. That's why when I watched it, I said I hated it because it those things happened, and you just can't get away from it. Like when a baby is getting eaten on screen, you want to be able to step back, and you're like, I almost wish it was a horror film because then you're like, it's just a horror film, but it's not. It's like a statement.
It's a big statement.
Yeah, and then when Jennifer Lawrence is getting accosted, there's douchebags that hit on her. I mean, there's references, inappropriate advances in both films, right?
Yeah.
The guys, make inappropriate.
Yeah, we always find our way back to some kind of male chauvinistic viewpoint.
Yeah,
because in Mother, she turns around and one of the sons of Ed Helms' characters like, nice view.
Yeah,
and you're like, and then of course I like boobs.
Yeah,
I like your boobs. And you're like, okay, that's.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I like your boobs.
It's inappropriate.
Both are creepy, but one you can separate from because it's a high school. Even in Jake Gyllenhaal when he gets hypnotized, it's almost comedian. He talks about his adolescence, right? Which is true. I mean, he's speaking like a true teenager.
But he is, and I love that scene because there's so much honesty.
There's so much truth about it, right? But in the Mother, it's just uncomfortable, and it stays that way, and I couldn't disconnect from it, and that's the power of the storytelling. But at the same time, I think if I was able to disconnect to it and then come back to it, I think the experience would have been more where I want to do more now.
See, I think I was able to disconnect from it because I'm so callous.
You're just like, I don't even want to go there.
So, and then I go back in because I do like parts of it, and then I go, and then I go,
yeah.
You just have a softer heart than I do, Tom.
I just, to the very end, like, she's burnt to a crisp, and he pulls her heart out and crushes the crushed, whatever's left. And, even after.
Is he saying something there about machismo, like male chauvinistic?
I think so, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because the male dominance of like taking everything that's there and then literally ripping the heart out of the woman. And I mean, beyond just like the symbolism and the allegory of climate change and Mother Earth, but like literally man doing like taking advantage of every piece of woman.
With our alter egos, I think we love to look in a mirror and we hate to look in a mirror. So when we see something we like it. When we look at a movie and you see qualities that you connect with and you're like, oh, dude, that's... Because there's parts with Javier Bardem that I was connecting with who we like to write. And when you get writer's block, it's the worst, right? Mm-hmm. And you try and find, you do things that are just not normal to get your mind frame to where it's moving.
And speaking of the writing, when Ed Helms' characters come and he's excited because he likes the writing, and Jennifer Lawrence is like I like your writing too. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Because it's any piece of little excitement that gets your energy up, so you can go and
So at 2 a.m, you get up to use the restroom, and all of a sudden you want to write, and that's not the time for the rest of your family. So I found myself connecting and hate the self-loathing of like, oh, do I treat my wife that way? Because like not necessarily as mean as Javier Bardem, but just that attention, to all the things that mothers do. Yeah. Because not only is she a Mother Earth, but she's a mother. Like she renovated that whole house by herself.
Yeah, the idea of the nurturing aspect of motherhood.
She cares for him. She provides for him.
Yes.
And makes breakfast, and she doesn't like it when these crazy people just come in, but she deals with it. And then I think about like all the things that husbands and guys do. Like, my college buddies are coming over. Or I'm doing this.
Yeah. You start,
It's like true. And you're like,
but here's a hot take.
That's hard to look at in the mirror.
Here's a hot take for you, Todd.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a movie called Father.
Mm-hmm.
All the Me Too lovers are going to hate that stuff.
That is...
Coming at you with Father! Exclamation point.
Now, who would that be starring?
Father's going to be starring Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, perfect. Or Matt Damon.
Yeah, it has to be. No, but...
and then, one of them has to be the father and the other one has to be the mother. Ben Affleck should be the mother.
And I'll using a line from Donnie Darko, I'll start it off this way because, what's the point of living if you don't have a dick?
That is a fantastic line.
No, I'm just using that as a segue, Todd. That's a line from Donnie Darko, and they're talking about Smurfs and asexuality. And Donnie says that. And then they all go, why do you got to getting so smart on us, Donnie? He's talking about the Smurf. They're talking about the Smurfs.
The Smurfs, yeah.
That scene was funny, by the way.
That is a great scene. I'd forgotten about that scene when they're talking about that. I don't mean
that, but it is funny. I just thought it was a good segue to bring us back to Donnie Darko.
Yeah. Smurfette and Vanity watches. Watches them have sex.
That scene's funny because it's real, and you got a bunch of teenage kids talking about things that don't matter and are irrelevant to anything ever, but in that moment seem so crucial and important. They're talking about the asexuality of Smurfs. They're talking about Smurfette and who gets to have sex with Smurfette.
Yeah.
And like, as teenage boys, I mean, that's pretty common.
We talk about dumb shit like that.
Dumb shit to talk about. What was funny in that scene too is after they followed up with Grandma Death, who's going to the mailbox, and they're doing commentary. They're like, oh, she's coming back. Oh, she's coming back. Like they're playing commentary on
someone's got to write that bitch a letter.
Yeah. Another hot take. So Brandon, we haven't heard from you for a minute.
Oh, I've been speaking.
Tell me about, I know you have. I just want to hear your thoughts on Donnie Darko and rewatching it after being away from it for a few years.
Yeah.
Did you ever like it? Do you continue to like it? Is it still something?
I'm kind of in T's corner where I still don't entirely get it. You know, I mean,
I don't know that anybody does.
Okay.
But I have my, we'll get into these.
Yeah.
We'll get into these, but I have my assumptions. So beyond the fact that I don't know that really anybody does, except for Richard Kelly, and he may not even fully understand. I don't know. I'd love to, that's one direct, I'd love to talk to that guy. Anyway.
If you are listening, Richard,
we got 85 views on YouTube.
So if you feel so inclined to get your insights on Donnie Darko.
But just like impressions beyond the analysis, which we'll get into, and we'll all have our own perspective. But just kind of impressions and things that stood out that you either liked or didn't.
I've always liked stories that, and this is what I liked with Mother, where there's just kind of a surreal reality, like where you, like when he's talking in the mirror with, and the mirror becomes,
seeing Frank on the other side,
and seeing Frank on the other side, and they both kind of touch the mirror, and just like, I've always kind of, and we saw that a lot with Mother too, where all of a sudden reality just kind of goes away. And
it's the abandonment of reality.
Just for that moment, and the characters not just accepting it. You know, I've always kind of liked that in films, and so I'd kind of forgotten all about a lot of those moments, like the mirror touch, and like when he's sitting in the living room and the water portal comes out, and and he just starts laughing. It's just kind of that's fun. What can I do with this? Kind of thing.
I mean, let's not forget that Donnie's a paranoid schizophrenic.
Yes. But
but you're right. He still accepts it.
But he's like, it's like I love it. I've got a big water portal coming out.
I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Me thinking about something, which is that's what makes the character so good for me too. Which is there's a level of him being eccentric, but he's also not so eccentric that it feels campy. It's not like you can have a character that's like really out there and really kind of loopy, but and then you can push it so far that it becomes clumsy. It's like, I don't really.
Right.
What I love about Donnie's character is like he is a little out there, of course, and he is a little eccentric, but he's also like, and I wrote this down because this falls into that. He's also, he's not overly eccentric. And he's super intellectual. He's a super smart person.
He's intelligent.
And so it kind of grounds it. You know what I mean?
What does his principal say about his
Iowa basic skills tests are out of the charts?
Yeah, but he said something like...
Oh, yeah, he says not out of the charts, but he said his principal said...
They're intimidating? Or
they're intimidating.
Is that what he said? Okay.
Yeah. But I love that about the character because, like, and I'm thinking about it. I think that what makes it believable in the sense that we know he's a paranoid schizophrenic. We know but he's not so eccentric and out there and wild and crazy because he's also really smart. So there's like a tie. It's like a tie down. It like buoys it down to like, okay, it's not just a crazy dude. Like, this is a smart person. This is like an Einstein or like someone that really intellectually IQ is high.
Right.
And then because of that, we're like, we can kind of believe them because we feel like intellectually they have some form of superiority. And then it buoys them down to like, okay, they can float around in this crazy paranoid schizophrenic space. And but they're not so far out there that they're just like put them in a nut house.
It's almost like they can process like those delusions better than other human beings. And like he's like he probably understands that they're not real.
Are they, or are they not real?
Well, that's what I'm. But he understands.
Are they not real though? That's the question. We'll get into. Let's get into some Darko.
Okay, let's do it.
Thesis here.
What I think they're real because that's how
I do
that's
too.
his world. We're invited. I think one beauty of the film is you're invited into this guy's world because you've always wondered. That they say there's that fine line between insanity and genius.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly what I was saying.
He walks that
exactly
the whole movie, and so you're able to let go of pretty much everything you believe in and consider his point of view for the movie, which is very refreshing. I think every time you watch it, and it makes everything that's institutionalized that we've accepted, it makes it look kind of embarrassing. Because
really embarrassing.
When she drives the line between love and fear, and she's like, "This is how it is," and life is that, and he's like, "No, love is so complex. We can't even talk about it." You're like, "Oh yeah."
And I love that line because he says, "Lumping everything into two categories and forgetting about everything else is dumb."
Is dumb.
Yeah.
And then
life is more complex than that.
Isn't that the like a foundation from the Patrick Swayze character? That's his.
Yeah, that's his thing.
So this is what 1988.
Yeah,
88.
So self-help is starting to boom.
It's
right?
huge,
and people are realizing that if I follow this guru or this thing, then I remember before they had bookstores, the self-help section was just huge, and it still is. I mean, online, it's all online now, but this is the idea of this new theory that if you follow it, you're going to get from point A to point B. And it's never like that. Life is so complex. There is no solution, cure-all, formula, or anything that we've found that where if you follow it to a T, you're going to get from point A to point B.
I also think the conviction of the parents and the teachers and the principal that they're doing the right thing is really kind of
detrimental,
in a sense, because they're so like the one teacher, Kitty, the teacher who's also the Sparkle Motions dance coach.
Yeah.
She is so convinced that Patrick Swayze's she's so convinced that his philosophy works, and she's so upset about Drew Barrymore's character bringing in a Graham Greene book that she labels as, which is ironic, pornography. And the stuff she's bringing is from a pornographer.
The kitty porn guy, Patrick Swayze.
So, but their conviction is overwhelming. It's like they feel so adamant. And I think he's also labeling like that kind of generation and things that were happening, which was like everyone is so convinced that like it's either one or two ways. There's a political party here. There's a political party there.
It's so political.
Black, it's white.
The movie.
And even from the opening scene, she's like, and it's a countercultural film because it's about kids standing up to their parents' philosophies and theories about what life is.
I'm voting for Dukakis.
Exactly. From the get-go, she says, "I'm voting for Dukakis."
That's a good point because you said at the beginning, Mother had an agenda, right, and it didn't veer from it. And Donnie Darko definitely had a political agenda, but I think it was all well done in the subtext. So like there's the references to the elections and Dukakis and who lost, but Drew Barrymore, when she gets fired, she walks out with the American flag. You're seeing visual stuff like that. It's not overly in your face, but you see the subtext enough. You could tell where it's not like here you have to eat this and accept it for what it's worth. It's like you can sample this and come to your own conclusions, and that's what that separation that allows me to breathe and want to see it again and again and pick up something.
I mean, I think Richard Kelly's basically holding a big middle finger up to his parents, or at least that generation. Like, and he's essentially saying, "Look, I'm not you, at all, in any way." And life's not what you think it is. It's not this straight thing of like you make this decision or that.
There's another parallel of this like not reincarnation, but this cycle of life, right? Where every generation tries to redefine itself ideologically, religiously, culturally, where whatever you were raised in, you want to veer from that path and break the rules. And this is a modern day film. I think that's that timeless where I see my kids, or I see when I was growing up what I wanted to rebel against. You have those same angsts against your teachers, against formulaic and institutionalized thought, be it religion, whatever it is. You question that, and I think as this next generation defines it, it's going to be torn up again. As that cycle.
I think too, and it's interesting because we talk about how much of it is a big middle finger to that the previous generation in some ways. At least that's how I interpret it.
Mm-hmm. To baby boomers, essentially.
Yeah, saying, hey, look, we're doing our thing. I also think that what's funny is they're still pulling a little bit, because if you look at Donnie's character, he talks about the portals and the time travel and all these things, and he's talking about but what if it's a path? What if it's God's path? So he's still hanging on to something. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Potentially, he's still hanging on. We talk about like the religious tones of what Mother is, but Donnie Darko, if you look at it, also has some kind of Christian tones underneath it, which is like Donnie believes in this time travel. He's seeing things. He calls Jim Cunningham, he calls Patrick Swayze's character the Antichrist. He says, I think you're the fucking Antichrist. And all the kids go, yeah, they all cheer. So he's still pulling in religious tones. And then when he talks to the teacher, and the teacher's like, they're talking about the portals and the time travel. And he's like, but they're talking about predestination and all these kind of things. And Donnie goes, but what if that's God's path? That's God's portal. And the teacher's like, well, I can't continue this conversation.
He'll lose his job.
He'll lose my job. Because, but Don, so it's still like Donnie's still holding on to a little bit, because otherwise he wouldn't have brought up that idea of God. Yeah. So there's still that going in that way, even though he's still like, hey, I'm not part of this generation, I don't believe it, but he's still got something there.
Well, they got it right in that character, is that even though, I mean, and I think it happens a lot, people that are raised in a conservative Christian and they stray away from that, they still, it's just always in the back of their mind. It's always, I think you're absolutely right. And you just can't get away from it. Especially if you were born and raised and parents still believe in that baby boomer. So if maybe it was just a nod to his parents and to that generation, like, yeah, it's still there, but
I don't really believe it, but there's still a tone to it.
I thought it seems a pivotal moment because ultimately I think he realizes that he is in control. This crazy kid, right? Everybody says he's crazy, and he himself hears it and he says, I understand more about my situation and what I'm dealing with, and even then I'm still in control of my destiny. Like it's on me. I have the power to change my future, and I don't think you have that in Mother. Right? Yeah. It's like, this is what you're doing. This is what your future
Here's
is.
The end game.
You're in hell. You're going to hell.
End game is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in Donnie Darko, is like, it seems impossible. Time travel seems impossible. All these visions are completely impossible. Yet it's possible. And that's like, how do you turn all of those? And you're comparing that in contrast to this very, straight line religious school, right? And you have these two different paths, and you're right. He acknowledges the path. God has a plan for you, but at the same time, he's like, well, I'm still in control of these elements of my life, and he ultimately makes that decision.
So let's get into that. How does he make the decision? How does he know he has the ability
to time travel?
Yeah. Where does this happen in the story, in the plot? You have all of these unnatural,
for its time, the incredible visual effects, the dreams, the abyss kind of water moving around from your chest. At the very end, he sees, I thought it was a wormhole, but it's nature, right? It's like this funnel, and that looked like very natural to me. Like he realizes, because I think the setup was, his science teacher was like, it can one appear, and it's like, oh, it's very highly unlikely that'll ever happen. So
you need a spaceship. You need to do it
right.
you need to get to
Yeah. And at the end, he sees that. And that's a very natural shot. And you're just accepting, like, oh, it came. So it's true. It's got to be true. And I think that's when he's able to make his decision that,
how far... So let's play with the timeline. Why is the timeline so important? You have the 28 days, the minutes, the seconds, the whole deal. Talk about the time travel.
Time is important.
Let's talk about how far, like, how does it play out? I want you guys to answer me, because I have my thoughts. How, what's the timeline? How does this transpire?
Go ahead.
How does this thing get achieved that we see at the end?
He knew from the get-go.
He knows from the beginning
how much time he has.
Do you know? Can you recall a part in the film that allows you to go,
when he kisses her?
The moment she kisses him.
Yeah.
After they said some shitty things to her in the classroom and she runs out and she kisses him.
And I think it's ultimately, there are some, these are kind of sappy things, but like, how far would you go for love? If you love somebody or wanted to share a moment of love with somebody, what would you do? And that's a theme I was thinking of, like
it is sappy, but
Eternal
it's good.
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Fantastic movie.
And other things where, what is it? What's the other time travel one with the penny? Pulls out the penny.
Somewhere in time.
What's the time? Somewhere in time. Cut that one out. But somewhere in time. But what would you ultimately do for love? And I think he has this beautiful high school adolescent relationship with a beautiful girl who understands him, and they bond, and she champions for him, and then
agree with all of
ultimately he realizes that it's that tragic love again, where he's not going to be able to, has to choose his love, right? And that theme, like Spider-Man.
But in order to do this, he has to see into the future.
Yeah. Which means he does see in the future.
So how far into the future can he see? Because he has to see Gretchen die.
Yeah.
The whole point is she gets run over.
Far enough.
So when you're saying at the kiss, at this point he knows that far in advance from the kiss that she'll die and he has to save her.
It might even be, when she walks in the room and Drew Barrymore, that's a beautiful scene. Drew Barrymore, like, sit by the cutest guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And she sits by him.
I love that scene because then she tells the other girl to move.
Yeah.
I was like, this would never fly in our school.
If that happened to me in high school, I'd be like, whoa, that's like an ultimate dream come true. But at the very end, you fast forward to the end where she's like, do you know him? She's like, no.
Okay, but T's saying at some point either, because this is interesting.
He knew, though. I just know he knew.
No, I agree.
He made that.
But I'm trying to figure out when.
When? Oh.
Okay, so you're saying sometime.
Watch it again now.
I know. Well, I don't know either, but I'm trying to dissect it because it's so interesting. I had a student come up to me last week and I said, I'm doing a podcast. I said, you better listen to it. And I said, I'm doing one on Donnie Darko. And he said, oh, he got all excited. So he wants to know too. So there is listeners out there that will want to know. You're saying from either the time she enters and they see each other or the kiss. What's your idea? What's your consensus
of when he knew that he
at some point,
time travel?
He's got to know, right? Does he not? Does he have to know? Or does it like this?
You have to know. I think you have to know in order to manipulate that. Yeah. And I think his hyperintelligence and his parallels to Einstein are kind of there. I think. Okay, what if it's when those little portals were coming out and he looks down and laughs? I wonder if he figures it out then. He's like looking at those and he realizes what those are.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So when because he sees it coming out to his dad and the path's laid out.
They're watching the football game.
They're watching the football game and the little abyss, whatever things are coming out. I call them the abyss because they kind of remind me of the abyss. From the abyss. So
shout out back to Ed Helms.
James.
Isn't Ed Helms in the abyss?
Harris.
Ed Harris. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ed Helms is.
And yes, he is.
Not Ed Helms, Well, but it's Ed Harris, right?
It's Ed Harris in Mother.
Yeah, that's what I meant. We're going around this the long way. But I was trying to
Yes.
give a shout out to Ed Harris,
Yes.
who's in Mother.
Who's in Mother
Sorry.
and The Abyss.
Now we got tangent on The Abyss.
No, you're fine. So there's those where he sees them because he doesn't get it quite at first, but he sees that his dad, because it goes in front of him. It's the path he's going to take. And so it's laid out in front of him.
Future.
It's the future.
This is a portal.
Right.
This is and even when he goes to the gun, because you see, like you're saying, you see the portal. As far as forward as that goes is where he can see. So he knows the portal goes all the way to the gun in the closet in his parents' bedroom.
Yes.
So even though he's sitting there, he can see that far.
Right. But I think he gets it at the football watching scene when he sees his own and he does that little laugh because it kind of starts to come out and he goes, I think that's the, oh my God moment.
You can see.
But then, and this is getting technical. I don't know either. That's why this is the discussion. This is what makes this film fun, and this is why people will listen because people like this shit.
Yeah,
they like breaking this kind of stuff down. Because I don't know either, but I'm trying to build consensus.
Oh, I'm right.
And figure out.
I'm just playing.
I actually think you're wrong, and I think you're wrong too. But we'll get to that.
Okay. So
that's
when I think he
figured out. But that doesn't mean that I'm right either. I don't know, right? I'm not saying hey, look at this is it.
That's the moment I think he figured it out.
I'm not going out to the internet world and saying I fucking broke Donnie Darko. Okay, I don't know. But that's when you think it is.
At this time, no. Yeah, I think that's when, because then after that, that's when he starts getting the nuts and bolts about it.
See, because I think here's how I look at it. Okay, at some point, everything he's doing, he's almost like a detective. In other words, like he's investigating, going through the process. He finds out. He starts asking he starts seeing Frank. So the intellect and all the different things, or the psychosis, or the not the psychosis, but the schizophrenia. He's seeing Frank, and Frank's telling him things, right? Giving him clues, right? Then he starts talking to his teacher, the science teacher. Teacher opens up and says, "Hey, I got a book.
Probably shouldn't give you this, but here it is."
Yeah, exactly. Forewarned, I shouldn't do this, but nonetheless, here it is. And it's a book by Roberta Sparrow, Grandma Death.
Grandma Death.
He was familiar with because Grandma Death whispered something to him, so he knows who she is, right? She writes a whole book on the philosophy of time travel, which immediately interests him. He's like, "Ooh, time travel."
Not only that, he said he referenced her backstory, right, where she just gave up on everything
religious
she believed up to that point.
She was a nun.
So she
gave up on all religion and wrote a book on science fiction, time travel. Okay, so in other words, shunning all that and doing this direction. But anyway, Donnie gets the book. He studies the book. He's figuring the book out. The book tells him about, and I keep referencing portals, and I know they're not called that, but they're called something rays or something like that. Yeah. But they're the portals, right? And the book references those. So that gives him a clue into like what they are and what those things that he's seeing is, right? So here's the thing. I don't think it's when he meets Gretchen, and I don't think it's when he sees the portals. I don't think the moment that he knows that he's got to travel back in time, I think isn't until like it comes up. It says October 26th or something like that. It's like 4 days before. And he's at the therapist's office. And he's at the therapist's office. She has him under hypnosis. Right? Nope. This is that's beyond that part.
Oh, that's later. Okay.
This is not well beyond, but it's after. Right? Okay. 4 days before Donnie has a session with the therapist, he sees Frank in the therapist's office under hypnosis, and he's shouting and prophesying something. Donnie is. He's saying, Frank says, I need to stop. Frank says, I need to stop. And he says, because the sky is going to open up. So he realizes there's the portal. So because he says, the sky will open up, right? Which means he knows when the portal's coming, he knows when it's happening, and he's seen he knows far enough in that 4 days that's when Gretchen will die, and that's when the portal will open up 6 hours after she gets, or whatever the time is.
The opening shot of this film is him sitting on the ground, and he gets up and he looks at something. Do you think he's looking at that portal? Because that means he knew from the very beginning.
Could be that too. Now that's not a bad thesis either.
You gotta see that you're like, what is he looking at? Like, what? Because he has a smirk on his face. Like, it's that moment of realization that like everything clicks for him then, And I'm like, did he just get in a bicycle accident?
Or is it after him and Gretchen have sex and he sees another portal, the one that you were talking about before, that really opens up and it leads right to her, and he sees her and it cuts back to the shot and he's at her stomach and he gets up and he's like, we have to go see Grandma Death. Yeah. Well, why? Why do they have to go see Grandma Death? Right? So these are all the questions that are out there. These are the kind of things we want people to like interact and comment on, because we gave at least 4 different options out there.
And there's definitely an escalation. And back to my point of, I think ultimately as he moves forward, he realizes more that he's in control of his fate. The more he discovers.
That's my point. Is I think after study and doing the work and going through it, if he becomes more in tune with what's happening, and he understands as he gets closer to it when it's going to happen and how to make it change.
This incident of a jet engine flying out of the sky where nobody knows where it comes from, and finding your room only, and landing and killing you. That's some of the most unlucky, improbable. You could win the lottery.
That's 1 in a billion, or whatever the numbers
are. Right?
Yeah, more.
The chances. But they're saying he's in control of that event somehow, and that's fascinating. I thought it was pretty intense.
So going back
to real quick, sorry. Okay, you're fine. He also knows, because once he says we got to go to the cellar door, right? Now he comes up off of her stomach, and he's like, we got to go see Grandma Death. We got to hurry. Time's running out. And then they go to the cellar door, and at the cellar door, Seth Rogen and his buddy are there. The 2 knuckleheads. But they run out, the whole thing. They call it's really, he calls it, what does he say? It's the plot device. What does he call it? You know what it is. I just went blank on what it was.
It's going to pop up on the screen.
It's going to pop up right here.
Yeah.
He says the Savior. And I can't remember the plot device. But anyway, they come ripping around in the car. And the thing is, Donnie's got to know, because, and this may be another point in time, he kills Frank, right? He shoots Frank, which means Donnie has the gun.
Yeah.
Which means he had to have brought the gun with him in order to do that. He must have seen that at some point. Yeah. So it could be when Brandon's talking about, maybe when but it's the moment that he foreshadows and he goes up to the closet and he sees the gun. You know what I'm talking about? Could be that point. So you could be right, Brandon. I don't know. Like, these are all just fun questions for people to talk about based on the movie, because it's fun to look at this movie and try to figure it all out, because really we don't know.
Only one person knows, and he may not know.
He may not even know. Right. But Donnie does have the gun, which means he would have known to bring it.
They reference Back to the Future too, which I think was
awesome. That was awesome.
Is that awesome?
Yeah.
It was shot so futuristically.
It's so futuristic.
Okay, here's an interesting parallel between. Yeah. So Donnie Darko and Javier have control. And they know what's going to happen. And they allow people to suffer regardless, to an extent. Why?
Fair. Does Donnie let people suffer, or just himself?
Well, he's included with people. Donnie's
but sacrificial.
Sacrificial.
Right? In the sense of, like, whatever ends up happening in the end, everybody's okay except for he's gone. That's Christ-like. Talk about religion. Talk about Jesus Christ. Like, I'm going to do everything I can so that everyone else is okay, and I'm going to sacrifice myself.
Well, but
now we're getting into some real religious talk.
So, this is just a me thing, but I've always been concerned about the survivors. Like, yes, you sacrifice yourself, but as a parent, knowing my kid would have done something like that for me, I would have a hard time living with that.
You're dead. You'll never know.
Yeah, that's true.
It's dark. I know.
It's dark,
though.
but
it won't matter.
I know, but in a story point, I think about,
unless you really want to get into religion, and then we can talk about the afterlife. We'll keep going.
But no. I mean, but I think about the survivors of that. Like, I think about those people that have to live with that.
I think his mom's
loss.
happy. I think Donnie's mom is happy.
She is. She's smoking a cigarette.
She's smoking a cigarette. She smiles. She waves. She's happy.
Right?
She's got a little thing on her face. Yeah. I don't even know if she knew something, but I think she's happier that he's gone, and not in a way that like, oh, I got rid of that kid. Like I think
his suffering is over.
It's a relief because he was in her mind, in her perspective, was suffering. So I think she's happy.
You
know,
Dad's just oblivious.
I like the dad though. He is oblivious. Yeah.
I think it's funny that he laughs when he's in trouble. He's like, oh, he said.
He even tries to defend him when they're the therapist and the mom and dad are talking, and they're like, Donnie got suspended for telling his teacher to shove up the thing up her anus, and he's like trying not to laugh. He's like, well, I don't think it was all his fault.
But no, I mean that's kind of an interesting parallel between the two films. That
no, it is.
There is
that's a good point.
An element of control and knowing.
And the males always have dominance. What's the deal? Me too.
The penis metaphors are abundant.
They're abundant. I mean, Donnie's in charge. Now, he does it for the girl, though.
Big, huge portal dongs going everywhere, you know.
Who does Javier Bardem do it for? The next
crop of people or
himself? I think he seems like a selfish prick.
He's made out to be, right?
That's how I think he is.
It's just the next person.
Whatever is
mind, right?
better for him. He's like, I'll kill you and move on, but I know I get to keep going here. That's how I see it.
She willingly gives her very last thing to him, though. Like when she's laying there on the table and she's like,
he fucking takes it.
But she says,
hand in her chest and is like, let me fucking rip your heart out.
Only after she says you can take it.
Yeah.
She gives him that permission.
That's what's frustrating.
She's like, you can take it.
She's still loving.
Well, she knows she's fucking fried. I mean,
she's the fucking giving tree. I get it.
Yeah.
Move on. Get the fuck past this movie.
They make him to be this a little bit too much of a. Well, I mean, he's the only one that can go out whenever he wants, right? He gets to go out into that beautiful world and do whatever. They allude to other things he's doing out there, and then he comes back, and she never gets to leave the house.
No,
right?
She never leaves the house once.
Let's get back to a movie that matters. Donnie Darko.
The deeper question, though. I mean, if time travel, if you could control time travel, would you want to? It's so dangerous. I mean, it seems like, it's one of the wishes I'd get. You know,
time and space. You need to include space because if you just time traveled, then you just wind up in space. Because the Earth's moving, so you're like going back 50 years. I'm just a little science
more
there.
Focus in. Can you control
Chris
your
Nolan.
future? If you could know your future, Brandon.
Fourth dimension.
If you could know your future, would you want to? And the second question is, once you know your future,
and then travel back to,
would you be willing to change something?
Yeah.
It depends on, because you got the classic. Okay, where I am right now with my knowledge, could I go tell my dumb shit self to like invest in a couple things so I could like fund some films? Sure.
You just want to Marty McFly it with the almanac.
Well, I mean, there's that scenario. That's exactly right. Marty McFly.
Shout out to Rob Zemeckis.
And Bob Gale. Don't forget Bob Gale.
I think we need to watch Back to the Future and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Those two.
Okay.
We'll get there. Answer your question.
Well, so there's that type of, but then there's the, from your point into your future, if with the unknown and everything like that. So would I want to know that? Like, I think everyone's curious.
Yeah.
But if given the actual opportunity to know the rest of your existence on this planet, I think I'd still say no.
But then you're like Noah Wiley's character when he talks about you can't, if you travel and you know the future, then it's not the future, because now you're going to, if you go back, you'll be able to make alterations that change what the future is. In other words, like you know the choice you were going to make, and maybe your choice is not that anymore. You're going to change it either way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But I always think about the actual scientific things of it. So if you travel in a machine and this point and go to see your future, well, you don't have a future because you've been gone for that amount of time. Like if you go 50 years from this point, well, you're skipping over that time to get to that time. So you're fucked no matter what, because,
Interstellar, right?
Back to the Future didn't do it quite right, just because they go.
It was fun though.
It was fun,
Yeah, I
but
still believe it.
if Marty and Jennifer get into the car with Doc,
Back to the Future right now.
I'm just saying
because that's going to take it's already an hour in. That's going to take us down a tangent down. Fucking.
Answer is no. I don't think I would want.
What are you going to do, T?
I'd be curious.
Yeah. No, hell no, because I open up a fortune cookie and I believe it. Like I do. I like it. I take everything seriously. So if I knew my future, I'd be so afraid of it, good or bad, that I would mess it up. And I think it's better for me to mess it up and live life without regrets than say, I wish I could go in the future and find out what those regrets are and try and change those.
So T's a no. I'm a no as well. So that's 3 no's.
Yeah.
I'm a no because I just don't give a fuck. I'm living day to day.
I'm getting you a T-shirt. That's all there is to it. I don't give a fuck.
Okay. Let's do that was a great discussion. We went a lot of places. Look, we could keep going.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff here. I would just recommend for anybody that has not seen, I would watch Mother. By the way, I would recommend it. I think I give every film a chance. I think you should watch all movies.
Definitely.
And I think that you should watch Mother. I think one time is enough. I'm
going to watch it twice because
I actually watched it twice too because I wanted to be prepared. But nonetheless, yes.
Well, I want to watch it twice just so I can watch the beginning, knowing what I know what's coming. Oh, see, whoa! I'm just joking. What did you want me to see on this IMDb? I've got it up.
Just pull it up. You have it there ready.
I have it ready.
So, I think everybody should watch Mother. I think Darren Aronofsky is a great filmmaker. But also with Donnie Darko, I think everybody should watch these 2 films. It's fun to compare and contrast the 2. It's funny to see what we've been doing the last couple of weeks where we're taking a film from a first-time film director and then a film from a more experienced film director and comparing and contrasting the 2. It's funny because it's almost like not any film, but any films that we choose, there's always some kind of tie-in. There's some theme that we can bring together.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't go into these things going, Mother and Donnie Darko, this is why they're related, or this is why they would be good comparables.
Jesus.
Or things to talk about. I didn't think about that until, but when you watch them now, you go, there are some comparables and tie-ins we can talk about. So I think everybody should watch Mother. I think everybody should watch Donnie Darko. It's a rewatchable. Mother is not. Donnie Darko has an IMDb rating of 8 out of 10. What is where are we at on Mother on IMDb?
6.6.
6.6 out of 10. I think IMDb is spoken. I think it's probably high.
What is your rating?
I did out
some
of 10 though for Donnie Darko. See,
that's
but
low to me.
I think that's low, and
Yeah.
I think 6.0 is fair on Mother. I would give it just above 50%. So 6.0 on Mother. For Donnie Darko, we keep using this every cast, but I just keep hitting that 9.5.
Yeah, 9.5.
You know, that 9 point. It just feels like the right number.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, right? So I admittedly, when I teach, and T, you might do this too. I don't know. Maybe my students won't like this. I have a hard time giving out hundreds because in life, I just don't think hundreds exist.
Mm-hmm.
So now I did it within Bruges.
I was gonna say you do it within
I
Bruges.
did it within Bruges because it is a fucking 10 out of 10. Donnie Darko is a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Real quick, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience, 87% from the critics for Donnie Darko.
Oh, let me pull up.
Metacritic has Donnie Darko at 71.
Did you look up Rotten Tomatoes?
I haven't yet.
Okay,
Nothing on Mother because I didn't care.
I am curious on if the audience...
Pull it up on Rotten Tomatoes. So once again, IMDb 8 out of 10, 80% Rotten Tomatoes for the audience, 87 for the critics. So I think the critics have it right. I think the audience is wrong. Metacritic at 71. I think they're horribly wrong. It's only based on 21 reviews. And then on Rotten Tomatoes for Mother, what do we got?
Okay, so the critics gave it 69%, and the audience score at 50%.
Both correct.
Both correct.
Now, I had no idea about those scores going in, but I think they're both right.
See, that's what I'm wanting. You know, and this is hard to to really know because of why we are who we are. But we analyze Mother, but the average audience moviegoer, they probably didn't understand what the fuck was going on. A lot of it. I'm not boosting us up, but we're in the industry. This is what we do.
No, you look at it differently.
Yeah, we look at it differently.
Critiquing it and analyzing and putting a critical eye on it. It's a whole different thing.
At the same time, I don't think anybody wants to pay $20 $20.
No one wants to spend that
to see someone get raped, to see a baby get eaten. To see.
I think the neck snap was worse.
I go and I mean this.
You don't pay to see that stuff.
I go back to virtue signaling. Darren Aronofsky's like, hey, climate change is real, and people don't want to pay money to see that because it's already a real thing in life and a debate that we have politically as it is. So I don't need a movie to tell me that.
See, and I'm going to disagree with you that I think this film was more Christian-based and more, not necessarily climate change, but I think it was more on
I think that's exactly
the worst of humanity.
Is,
I think it's the worst in humanity and how we deal and how we treat things that are given to us.
I agree with that, but using the allegory of climate change. She burns. She's Mother Earth,
it could be
and
anything,
she burns the world.
See, but that's more of the Bible, though. I mean, if you get into Revelation, absolutely, because you've got the flood. I'm
saying though, this is bring up a whole nother debate because I don't think Aronofsky's just spacing it off the Bible. I think he's basing it off his political views.
Oh, I think
of burning.
I think he's doing both, but he's definitely using. Because we have creation, we have the 7 days.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Yeah. I'm also saying you're sidestepping the fact that he's doing it for another view, another stance on, hey, this is what we're doing to the earth, and soon enough the earth will scorch itself. The ozone will go away and it'll be scorched.
I think it's more of a comment on humanity than it is climate change.
I think it's both.
It's probably both.
I think it's both.
But,
what's your rating? Go for it. Mother.
I think I'm going to give Mother a...
You can't be influenced now by the...
No. I'm not even... I don't even have to score. How about I give
Your
Mother...
hesitation is...
Because I liked a lot of the visual elements of it.
Hesitate.
I'm not hesitating. I
in
thought
Bruges,
about it.
I just fucking said 10 and we were done. It was game over.
7.5.
7.5.
7.5.
Okay.
For Mother.
We on mid 90s we talked about what was it out of stars or thumbs up. What's Mother's out? This is a good little. I liked what you did.
It's out of Heartstones.
Crystal Diamond Heartstones.
Crystal Diamond Heartstones.
7.5.
No, love. Ultimately, where was it? Love. You give your
dead babies.
Love.
How many dead babies is it?
8 babies.
Heart. What'd you say? Heartstones. 7.5 Heartstones for Mother. Give me your rating on Donnie. I can't not laugh on that one.
And then I'm going to give Donnie Darko 9 out of 10 Smurfs.
I love it. T, where are you at on Mother?
I'm at 8 on Mother.
At 8 what?
8 what?
8 out of 10.
8 blood vaginas on the floor?
8.
That's what I thought it was.
8 babies.
By the way.
Yeah, it resembled that. Yes. It did. I'm sorry.
And it was bleeding. Just
8 out of 10. We'll just go 8. T will go 8 out of 10. What's you at on Donnie Darko?
9.5.
T, you're coming in hot on 8 out of 10.
Anyway. Wait, you gave Mother 8? I was thinking about the floor vagina.
I hated Mother because it was hard to watch. Because for me, it was like looking in a mirror, and sometimes you just don't want to see the bad side, and that's all it is. It just shows the ugliness and darkness. It hijacks you. It makes you feel like you're burning. And there's no resolve.
There's no resolve, right? Absolutely.
And I think if an artist can do that...
there's things we can do, but
if an artist can do that to somebody who's just like, I want to watch a movie.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty powerful storytelling. So I think in the ability to manipulate and do that purposely with an agenda, that so many movies attempt that, and documentaries and news articles, and everybody's trying to do that these days. Aronofsky does it artistically.
Visually and artistically.
And he's saying,
I agree with that.
As
much as I don't like the movie, I agree with what you're saying. And wholeheartedly as a filmmaker say 100%.
It takes cojones to do that and defend it.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, this is an art film and it says something about climate. No, it says, fuck you. This is what I'm saying. This is my agenda. This is what and for directors,
that
it's
I love.
All about that vision, and he holds true to that. Whether you like it or not, he holds true to it. And so I got to defend him for that. Again, I didn't like the story because it made me feel very uncomfortable, and I want some kind of redemption at the end where I feel like, okay, maybe I suck. I realize that now. I just watched 2.5 hours of why I suck. Now I want to do something about it, and I don't feel like what can I do about it other than bask in my suckiness?
Yeah.
Whereas Donnie Darko, I watch it, I'm like, oh man, okay. I feel like sometimes, I don't know if you think you're like crazy at times, but you're like, that was a stupid thought, or that was crazy. And for Donnie Darko, there's a lot of redeeming quality. Like, oh man, I can change my future. I'm in control of my future. You know? Yeah. I'm not as crazy as I think. Or if I challenge an institutionalized idea, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. That's a good point, because I think that movie is refreshing for that reason, which is like it's saying, hey, it's okay to challenge something. It's okay to speak up about something that you don't think is right. Or I agree with that. I give Donnie Darko 9.5 out of 10.
What?
9.5 out of 10 grandma deaths.
A whole line of grandma deaths and just one of them cut in half.
Just one grandma death cut in half.
Well, it's sitting for
I'm tempted on 10, but I'm pulling back. I'm biting my tongue. So I go 9.5, 10 out of 10, and then 6 out of 10 on Mother.
6 what?
I'm going to revert back to the mid-90s podcast and say 6 out of 10 fuck shits. You understand me?
I do understand you.
Because we're getting I like the debate.
That's a line in Donnie Darko, though, isn't it? Like the dinner table.
Oh no, fuck ass.
Fuck ass. Yeah. What is that?
How do you
do that?
How do you do that? Fuck ass. Well, I mean, really, the moral of Mother. I'll sum it up for you. It's really simple.
Let's just end this cast.
Okay, but really fast.
Okay,
you suck.
Just never letting anyone in the house. You're in business.
No, but Javier Bardem is in the house.
No, just the house guests. Just never let him in. And your
but they
life
break
is
in.
They were the problem, though.
They break in.
Javier Bardem was the problem.
No. It was the house guests.
They break in.
You don't think Javier Bardem?
So you can put up the barriers, but they still broke in.
Well, they were invited in initially.
But she doesn't want them in.
The younger brother,
Javier Bardem, invites them in and keeps inviting them in, right? So
correct. I'm just saying they didn't break into the house. Is what I'm saying. They were invited.
He does break back in though.
Yeah.
But once, to get his wallet.
Yeah. That guy. But anyway, we digress. The podcast is over. I was just making a joke, actually, but
is it over?
This is a good one because hopefully, of our 5-year listeners and viewers,
hey, we had
you're gonna go home and argue as much as this one.
We got 60 likes on Facebook. It's getting legit.
All right.
And only one of us has blasted it out.
It's almost merch worthy. Right.
So we're gonna have 100 by the end of the week. We didn't get into music a whole lot, which, by the way, Donnie Darko, Tears for Fears. Come on now.
The soundtrack
I will agree with you.
Darko.
Come on.
And there was no soundtrack.
Come on,
for
Mad
Mother.
World.
There was no soundtrack for Mother.
The ending track on Donnie Darko.
You're not supposed to enjoy anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But the music of Donnie Darko is on point.
Yeah, we don't care about Mother. Let's get back to Donnie Darko. There's no music. Okay, end of discussion. Moving on.
No Andy McDowell. I love it.
Andy McDowell would have been better in Mother, although Michelle Pfeiffer, but still, it would have been nice to see Andy McDowell in there, right, T?
As Javier.
Okay, good cast.
All right.
Thanks.
Everybody, thanks for listening. Brandon, signing off.
Signing off.
What's your sign off?
Fuck ass. How do you fuck ass?
Idiot.
What's yours, T?
I give you the only thing I have left, which is my love. Here. So you can
God damn it,
pull
T.
it out.
Mother.
The Tame Aperture podcast is produced by Dutch Angle Pictures in association with Studio B Productions. Listen, watch, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.